I verbally confirm, let me confirm that we have, I think, 8 out of 10 councillors with 4 in the room and 4 online, and we're expecting the other 2 to arrive as well. We have the CAO, Deputy Clerk, Director of Development Services and Environmental Sustainability, and other members of staff are present. The agenda was, we advised the public that input on the agenda was invited through the township email. Today's meeting is being live streamed and recorded on the Township of Muskoka Lakes website and YouTube channel. By participating in the open public meeting, you are consenting to your image, voice, and comments being recorded and posted online. We have no supplementary agenda, and I would like to ask council if anybody has any pecuniary interests on any of the items on the agenda today. Seeing none, we will move right on. Our first item of business today is a report from the Chief Building Official on fees and charges. And I believe Nick is online and ready to tell us about that.
Oh, I've just sent out something to the
all right, for those watching, our TV monitors here have gone blanks. So
better planner.
So we will
we can see you, Chair.
Always fall back to.
yes, I thought you might be able to. Thank you, Nick. Okay, Nick, you've got the you have the floor. Good morning.
Good morning.
Mr. Burry.
Good morning, and thank you, Chair Bosworth and committee members. And first, let me say I appreciate Councillor Zavitz and Councillor Roberts really embracing the winter theme with their backgrounds in the lovely fire. As well, I apologize for not being able to attend in person today, but I'm a little under the weather and don't want to impact anyone's long weekend. The purpose of this public meeting is to review the proposed changes to the Sewage System Maintenance Inspection Program fees in accordance with the requirements of the Building Code Act and the Ontario Building Code. Notice of this meeting was posted on the municipal website more than 21 days in advance of this meeting. In accordance with the Sewage System Maintenance Inspection Program RFP submissions and subsequent professional services agreement entered into with Envision Consultants, Phase 2 inspections with records, Phase 2 inspections without records, and post-remedial inspection fees are each set to increase by $5 as identified in the accompanying report DSES 2025-03. Upon approval of the fees identified, staff will prepare an amending bylaw to Schedule H of the Fees and Charges Bylaw 2023-109 and return to Council for approval next month. I stand for questions.
Thank you very much. Committee, do we have any questions on the report? Councillor Kent. Thank you. And good morning.
Good morning. Thank you, Nick. Just a really quick question. How did you come up with $5? Like, is there a logic of tying it to inflation or tying it to the increases in our budgets or whatever? I was just wondering. It wasn't important. It's not a lot of money, but was wondering what the logic was.
Mr. Snyder.
Thank you. And through you, as a part of the RFP that was submitted or requested and the submission, the successful consultant did identify an increase of $5 per year for those 3 inspection types.
Thank you. Any other questions? Seeing none, let me read the resolution. Moved by Councillor Roberts, seconded by Councillor Edwards. Be it resolved that committee approve the Phase 2 inspection fees as detailed in report DSES-2025-03, and that staff be directed to prepare an amending bylaw to Schedule H of Fees and Charges Bylaw 2023-109 for council approval. Any discussion? Seeing none, I will call a question. All those in favor? Any opposed? Thank you, that carries.
Thank you, committee.
Next item is a concurrent zoning bylaw amendment and consent application. It is plan number 2025-010, and Ms. Crowder is giving the report. Good morning.
Good morning. Thank you, Chair Bosemore. So the first applications to be heard this morning are concurrent consent applications B2323ML, B010225ML, and zoning bylaw amendment application ZBA 3124 in the name of 439592 Ontario Incorporated. The subject lands do not have a municipally assigned address. These lands front onto Ricketts Lake. Next slide, please. I would direct committee's attention to the submitted consent sketch on page 31 of the agenda package. The purpose and effect of the consent applications is to create one new waterfront residential lot on Ricketts Lake and to grant rights of way over the retained and severed lots in favor of each other. The retained and severed lots are currently vacant and are intended to be developed for waterfront residential purposes in the future. Next slide, please. I would direct committee's attention to the submitted zoning sketch on page 30 of the agenda package. The purpose and effect of the zoning bylaw amendment application is to implement the recommendations of the scoped ecological site assessment and noise and vibration impact study. This includes requiring a setback of 279 feet or 85 meters from the abutting Canadian National Railway and rezoning an identified wetland and surrounding buffer from waterfront residential WR1 to environmental protection EP1. The scoped ESA also identifies an intermittent water course bisecting the retained lot and recommends a 49-foot or 15-meter buffer for development to be maintained from this natural feature. A revised sketch has been submitted to illustrate this feature and to capture the required setback through zoning. Next slide, please. The revised sketch is now displayed on the screen, which shows this water course. You'll notice that the majority of this feature and its recommended setback lie within the recommended setback for development from the abutting railway. The scoped ESA further recommends that a 30-meter or 98-foot buffer be required for development from Ricketts Lake, with the exception of shoreline structures. The sketch would need to be further updated to reflect this recommendation. Next slide, please. Notice of this public meeting under the Planning Act was circulated 32 days in advance of this meeting. Comments were received from Nick Snyder, the township's chief building official, stating no objection to the application. Comments were received from Tim Sopko, manager of operational services, stating that rights of way are considered to be private and these roads may not be constructed or maintained in accordance with the township's road standards. The operational services department does not review this type of access, and road access for emergency services may be limited and/or unavailable via the proposed road access. Comments were received from Douglas Holland, the township's fire prevention officer, stating no objection to the application. The calculated fire response time is 10 minutes based on the fire department's average shoot time within the last 36 months and a travel distance of 2.2 kilometers from the fire station. As construction will be occurring on the property in the future, we encourage pre-planning with the fire department concerning fire risks during this vulnerable phase of development. The Fire Smart Homeowners Manual should be consulted to understand how treatments to the property influence wildfire spread. Comments were received from Emily Ramler, planner for the District Municipality of Muskoka, stating that the district would not be opposed to the approval of the applications, provided that the recommendations provided in the ecological site assessment and addendum are implemented to the satisfaction of the township. That confirmation be received from Canadian National Railway that all concerns respecting rail-related noise, vibration, and safety have been addressed, and the appropriate access can be provided to the severed and retained lots to the satisfaction of the Township of Muskoka Lakes. 3 comments were received from members of the public, which were circulated to the members of committee. A letter of support was received from Pascal and Adelina de Facendis, abutting property owners to the east, expressing their support for the proposal. 2 letters were submitted from Victor D'Souza and Margaret Cameron, both area property owners, stating concerns related to the use and maintenance of Buckeye Road. Following the circulation of comments to committee, 2 additional comments were received. A letter was received from Howard and Kathy Ray, area property owners, expressing concerns related to the use and maintenance of Buckeye Road. And lastly, a second letter was submitted by Victor D'Souza, which states that it is sent on behalf of 12 other area neighbors. This letter expresses concerns with the use and maintenance of Buckeye Road. Next slide, please. It is important to note that the endeavor to purchase a portion of the abutting township lands for the purpose of obtaining access from Buckeye Road is a separate process and shall be dealt with separately from the applications before you. As committee will likely recall, a resolution was passed by council on November 13th, 2024, that this disposition of a portion of the lands be confirmed and acted upon. However, a bylaw to finalize this has not yet been passed. Given that all of the public comments received, except for the letter of support from the abutting property owner, were in relation to the proposed access off of Buckeye Road, staff feel it's important to clarify that these processes are separate. Further, staff would note that the applicant has received approval from CN Railway to construct a private crossing across the railway to access the lands. However, this process would be very costly and Buckeye Road would still be traveled for this alternative access. Staff from the Township's Operational Services Department have conducted a site visit and determined the most appropriate location for an entrance off Buckeye Road. Operational Services has not stated any concerns with the proposed access. Next slide, please. As committee may recall, Ricketts Lake is considered to be over recreational carrying capacity, and the Township's 2023 official plan includes a policy to prohibit lot creation in these instances. However, this policy is currently under appeal. The Township's 2013 official plan does not consider recreational carrying capacity. Accordingly, staff's analysis of the applications does not include the recreational carrying capacity policies of the 2023 official plan. Next slide, please. Staff have prepared a detailed background report for committee's consideration. Staff recommend that public and agency comments be received and that staff be directed to undertake a review and analysis of the submissions with a view to providing a recommendation to Planning Committee on the applications at a subsequent meeting. Staff have no further comments at this time and are happy to answer any questions from committee. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Crowder. I believe the applicant's agent is Mr. Simpson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Appreciate that.
Good morning. You have 5 minutes, as you know.
Okay,
welcome.
great. So I'm Wayne Simpson with Tulloch Engineering, 80 Main Street West, Huntsville, P1H 1W9. I'm here representing the numbered company. The current principal of the numbered company is Wayne Middleton. Wayne and his father Ernie have been involved in the property for a number of decades, and it's got a long history, and it's sort of the last one being dealt with because of its complexities. And you've seen some of that in Emily's report. I do appreciate Emily's report. I really find it excellent in terms of her professional opinion and assessment of the situation, and we appreciate that. We've had many discussions with Emily about that. And the application, just to give you some background, the application for this property initially, to get separate, went back to 2017. At least that's the one that I last remember. But we made an application in April 2023, and we were given some feedback from the senior planner at the time. We had made an application to create 3 lots, and their suggestion was that we should keep it to 2 in terms of the character of the area, where it's going with the new official plan, and the issues associated with proximity to the railway. And we agreed with that entirely, and we revised the application to create 2 lots, and Emily's explained where they are. Both the lots have buildable areas that are beyond the area of impact that's dictated by the railway company, other than for vibration and whatnot. So, but both lots are developable. We appreciate that there's an environmental impact study that was done, and then there was an addendum to that a number of years later, more recently, and that the vibration and impact assessment, it was done by GHD Engineering, It has a number of recommendations in it, and I appreciate that it would be good for staff to have additional time to review the recommendations and to see how the current proposal fits into is consistent with all the requirements and recommendations of both those consultants, the environmental consultant and the engineering consultant. One of the last things that was sort of delaying this application was, how do you get there from here? Right now it's a waterfront access lot only, but initially it was to be accessed from the east on the road that was built parallel to the shoreline. But through some administrative errors along the way, not of the municipality in any way, shape, or form, but some administrative errors, those easements were not registered, and then it became much more complicated to be able to secure new ones, given the number of people that would be involved in the considerations. And so we went back to the railway company because the National Transportation Agency recognized that there was a railway crossing that was removed by the railway at one point, and there was an entitlement to have that replaced. And the NTA ordered that CN build that, of course, at Mr. Middleton's expense. So, and Emily properly noted that that's an expensive proposition. So we continue to pursue options, and the most recent ones, of course, have been getting access through the municipal lands to the south. And that's where there was some discussion among council in November of 2024. But I appreciate the recommendations. I really do appreciate sincerely the professional analysis that Emily and Bryce have attached to this report. And we look forward to it coming back to committee for approval in the not too distant future. And we're available to answer any questions. Mr. Middleton may be online. He doesn't have really good internet service where he is for some reason, but he may be online anyway. I am. If you have any questions, and I'll be sitting back and waiting to hear from you in that regard. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Simpson. Do we have anybody wishing to speak either in favor or against this application? All right, we'll take them. For the person online who would like to comment, if you could turn on your mic and your camera, we will be able to connect with you. There we are. Good morning.
Well, good morning. Thank you for hearing our concerns. I just wanted to make sure everybody can hear and see me.
Yeah, we can hear and see you. If you start with your name and address, and you have 5 minutes.
Sure. My name is Victor D'Souza. My address is 1117 Buckeye Road, Unit 4. I've sent in an individual submission and also one on behalf of 15 of the residents of Buckeye Road. I would propose to not go through my submission in the interest of time, but really, sorry, did you have a question?
Oh, that's fine.
And really speak to the broad issue of safety with increased development occurring around Buckeye Road. I purchased my property in 1994. In our first year, Buckeye Road, which is a municipal seasonally maintained road, was occasionally used, and in the winter we would snowmobile in. In the 30 years, as I'm sure you've seen across Muskoka, there's been a lot of development, and I've seen a substantial amount of development on Buckeye Road. And now in the winter, we have 8 full-time residents that use Buckeye Road to access their properties. I expect development on Buckeye Road to continue not only on the lakefront, but there are also lots that are being developed along Buckeye Road. And with the new addition of access to Ricketts Lake, I understand that there are 2 lots being proposed in this submission. But I think the only certainty I have, and as I'm sure you'll agree, development in Muskoka will continue. And I expect in the future, there will be additional lots, whether they're lakefront or non-lakefront lots, that will seek to use this access to Buckeye Road. In our submission, we've raised the safety concerns with regard to the width of the road, both in the summer and in the winter, and they're very difficult to access in the winter. These are today's concerns. These concerns will increase as development occurs and the road infrastructure is not keeping up with increased density. As these safety concerns increase, our concern is that, at some point there's an accident that could happen either on the road or just from result of lack of access in the wintertime because of the width of the road. We therefore ask the committee to, as part of approving the access to Ricketts Lake, it also consider approving the widening of Buckeye Road to reflect the increased density both from Ricketts Lake and from Buckeye Road that will be using this road, and to change the status of the road from a seasonally maintained road to a year-round road, since this road will now provide access to 2 lakes and the residents, and I understand there are 2 residents on Ricketts Lake today or proposed, but I'm certain, and I'm sure you'll agree, at some point in time, there will be additional development, both on Ricketts Lake that will seek to access, or will seek to use the Buckeye Road in the wintertime and in the summertime. Thank you for listening to our concerns, and I'm happy to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you very much, Mr. D'Souza. Are there any other people wishing to speak? Okay, very well. Over to committee. Let's start with some questions. Councillor Nishikawa.
Sorry, I just can't find my hand yet. Sorry.
We can see your hand.
Thank you. My request or question would be, if we have an interest, if committee has an interest in seeing further development of the road itself, can I make that request that we have a conversation with Public Works in months coming forward, like it's a budget discussion? I don't want to ignore the fact that there was a request to look at the road itself, but could we put that in another ask somewhere else, like in another general finance discussion about the road itself?
Who in staff would like to answer that question? Ms. Crowder?
Through you, Chair Bosenworth, Councillor Nishikawa, I think what Councillor Nishikawa is getting at is correct, that if the council or in committee wishes to have the road looked at, it would be through a different meeting space. I would maybe look to my manager or director to advise what avenue that would be the appropriate avenue, but
Mr. Sharp.
Yes, good morning, committee, and through you, Chair. Yeah, I believe Ms. Crowder is largely correct. The only additional insight I would have with respect to a road widening, although a road widening can be required as a condition of consent, in this case, only the road, only a condition of consent for a road widening could be imposed on the subject lands. And there's really limited amount, or at this point, at least no part of the subject lands which abut the road. And it wouldn't, in my view or opinion, be appropriate to impose that condition on other landowners that aren't part of the application. So to Ms. Crowder's point, it would be, I think, a larger discussion that would have to be had around the council table, most likely with the Director of Operational Services. Thank you.
All right.
So if I could further, that was the direction that I wanted to know to go in. But not to ignore the fact that there is a request there, but it's not, for me, part of this application today.
All right. CEO Pink, do you have a comment on this?
Thank you. Through you, what I could perhaps suggest is, obviously this is a public meeting and staff's recommendation is to hear from public and agencies. When the matter returns, Operational Services can provide some comments to planning staff in their upcoming report on the impact of the proposed severance on Buckeye Road, and any comments related to any impacts or necessary changes emanating from that discussion. When this matter returns, committee can decide whether the matter needs to be advanced to a General Finance Committee discussion or a future budget meeting.
Very good, thank you. Committee, do we have any other questions? Councillor Roberts.
Thank you, Chair, and through
And
you.
then-
I'm okay to go?
Yes.
Okay, so thank you, Chair, and through you to Ms. Crowder. The first question that Councillor Nishikawa brought up, I think was a great question. I was going to ask that too. To have our roads people take a look at the concerns addressed by the delegate. My question pertains to septic systems or future septic systems. And I'm wondering, like we've done with a few other lakes within our official plan, whether there could be a requirement that any septic systems utilize phosphorus removal technology and have that as a condition of approval. Ms. Crowder.
Ms. Crowder?
Through you, Chair Bosemore, to Councillor Roberts. It's a great question. This particular application, we haven't had the septic inspections done yet, but those will be forthcoming. As you know, the new official plan includes wording about incorporating phosphorus binding soils and or septic abatement technologies. However, I believe that policy is under appeal. So I would just advise that portion here. Committee could choose to impose a condition of consent wherein a consent agreement is entered into that the owner agrees to utilize phosphorus binding soils and or septic abatement or phosphorus abatement technologies. I might get that wording wrong. But I would just caution that that policy is currently under appeal. Yeah.
Thank you. I'll have a follow-up during comments.
All right. Councillor Edwards?
Thank you very much. Sorry I was late getting on. I had a little bit of difficulty with the Zoom link. Through the chair to Mr. De Silva. The road, is there a road association that pays for the plowing and upkeep now?
Currently, it's we don't have a road association. It's the residents, the year-round residents as a group pay for the plowing now. The issue is the width, because as you can imagine, with all the snow we've had, the width has narrowed, and we've had an instance where emergency vehicles were not able to get through, and so we're just concerned that if this continues and there's more year-round residents, if there's a need for emergency vehicles, and in this case it was an ambulance, we are concerned that this, there's a risk to the residents, and the residents, unfortunately, are kind of like my age. They're in their 60s and over, so there's increased, seasonal year-round use by older residents, which has obvious consequences to access.
And that, I guess, what I was asking too is that if there was some sort of a group that pays for plowing to get you in, with the new people, because we require them to take some of that cost up, because they would be using a road that somebody else is plowing. That was my question.
No, it's a great question, and thank you for asking that. I guess at this point in time, there's as I said, there's 19 residents in total, not all of them, and everybody volunteers to contribute. We have no way of enforcing. We do have people that use the road that may not pay, and I don't know how we would enforce residents of Ricketts Lake, and it's possible that there will be more than just the two lots that will use Buckeye Road to access their properties in the wintertime, because the other road, I believe, is not maintained. So it's quite likely that other residents could use Buckeye Road, and we have no way of enforcing that those residents contribute. But it's the issue of cost, but it's also the issue of safety, that if there's more than 2 residents and there's 8 residents, now we've got 10 residents, that emergency vehicles may not be able to access. So that's our bigger concern, is the safety issue with regards to access through Buckeye Road.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much.
Any other questions from committee? Councillor Zavitz?
Thank you. Through you, I guess to staff, and on the same topic, do we have as part of our transportation master plan, the further study of seasonal roads in the township and how we are going to deal with those? Is that a bigger question? Thank you.
CAO Pink, I might ask you on that one.
Thank you. Through you. I apologize. Off the top of my head, I'm not familiar. I can try to look through the transportation master plan, but again, similarly, staff would be pleased to, when the matter comes back, we can provide further comments from the operational services department on that question. Again, any impact of the proposed severances on Buckeye Road, any need to upgrade or move from seasonal to year-round maintenance. But apologize, off the top of my head, I'm not overly familiar with every detail of the transportation master plan.
Councillor Zavitz?
Well, fair enough, and thank you for the supplemental. To the CAO, I suppose the bigger question is, we have, many of these scenarios throughout our 800 square kilometers. So, we've dealt with this question quite a number of times, and if it does require a bigger look, then I would suggest we need to consider that yet again, because as I say, for the many people that are in the same kind of situation on a seasonal road. Thank you.
All right. I think, any other questions? I'm going to read the resolution. Moved by Councillor Mazin, seconded by Councillor Nishikawa. Be it resolved that public and agency comments be received and the staff be directed to undertake a review and analysis of the submissions with a view to providing recommendation to Planning Committee on the applications. Any further discussion on this? Councillor Burry.
Chair, we cannot hear him. Councillor Zavitz, can you hear anything? No, no one can.
We can't hear a word that's been said.
Alan, I could hear the TV in the background playing it, so something's wrong technically. You can hear me, Alan? Okay, Alan, I know that what you and I are communicating and anyone else is being heard on, oh, they're in recess. They've recognized we have a problem. So everyone just hold on.
for those on Zoom, it would seem that hydro is in and out, and so they're just working on a resolution. So we'll just enjoy our time here on Zoom for a few minutes. I think.
Thank you, Susan. I should use the time to go finish.
Actually, I believe our voices can be
Gord, can you hear me? Yeah. The reason I stayed home today, I didn't know if you were going in or not, and I have a little tickle in my throat, and I thought I didn't want to give you anything, so that's why I stayed home.
Thank you, Alan. I
It's
stayed
my,
home.
guys, it's my understanding that other people can hear us, including those in the room, so I think we should just remain on mute.
I wasn't discussing anything that anybody could.
want to test?
Give it a whirl.
Testing, 1, 2, 3, 4. Can you guys hear us? Good. Can you say something?
Yes,
Indeed.
Chair, we can hear you.
Okay, we're back in business.
Good.
Thank you.
Thank you, staff.
Yeah.
Right, I think the question was, if our official plan has Rickett Lake classified as something that's restricted under the,
No.
Chair Bosenworth,
yes?
I can hear you, but I'm being told by members of the public that they cannot hear anything.
All right.
Chair, I can hear the other room, the TV's going with the meeting on, and I can hear it online.
Okay.
All right. Is there a way to test this, staff? All right, so we're checking on that.
Okay.
Okay, so
On YouTube or in the Zoom link? YouTube. Okay, YouTube is one thing, but they have to be able to hear on the Zoom link because that's where people, the delegates reside. They don't reside on
If they
YouTube.
can hear on the Zoom link, then everyone should hear on the Zoom link.
Correct.
You don't partition between.
I find that interesting, yeah.
You don't partition.
I agree.
between Participant. And
okay. I think we're all right now, but Councillor Mazin? Okay,
Yes,
we're okay. Thank
I
you.
am
Great.
here.
Thank you very
I
much.
can hear. Thank you.
Good. All right. So the question was under,
Ricketts Lake over.
yes, I know, but it's recreational carrying capacity was the word I was looking for.
Okay.
Why are we not applying this to this application?
Chair, and we did not hear you, anyone ask that question. The last thing we heard from the chair was you were going to read the resolution.
So the resolution was read, Councillor Roberts. I asked the question and the chair has just re-asked my question. Stand down.
Stand up. Because it's not.
Ms. Crowder.
Through you, Chair Bosenworth to Councillor Burry. Yes, so under the 2023 Township Official Plan, Ricketts Lake and a number of other lakes have been deemed over recreational carrying capacity. This policy in the Township's Official Plan is under appeal. There's another section of the Official Plan, it's section A2B, that says when policies are under appeal, we should be having regard to them in the meantime. However, considering the clergy principle, which states that you should review planning applications against the policies that are in place at that time, and considering a conversation we've had with our solicitor, we have walked away with the opinion that we are to only review these applications against the policies that are in effect. So the policies of the official plan that are currently under appeal are not currently in effect. They haven't been approved by the OLT. So with that basis, we are to review applications at this time under the policies of the official plan 2023 that have not been appealed. And where there's cases that relevant policies have been appealed, we would revert back to the 2013 official plan. And the 2013 official plan does not consider recreational carrying capacity. So I hope that gives you the background, but I'm happy to answer any follow-ups.
Follow-up question, Councillor Burry?
No, no question. It certainly answers the question, but it infuriates me. Again, the Planning Act is not really taking care of our environment. We know that this particular lake has a problem, and yet we're blindly going to go and allow a severance because the Planning Act says, well, you know what, it doesn't really matter.
Ms. Crowder, is this lake over capacity from an environmental point of view?
Through you, Chair. Recreational carrying capacity is a measure of social carrying capacity. So it measures a number of factors like the lake size, how many lots have been created on the lake, how many potential recreational activities will occur on the lake based on the number of lots that have been created and the size of the lake. It's not a measure of environmental capacity. Thank you. It is a measure of social social capacity. So I hope that.
But is this lake under a environmental carrying capacity limit?
I'm just going to check the official plan to triple check that it is just a social measurement, but I believe it's not an environmental measurement.
So I would argue that
Councillor Burry?
a social carrying capacity will be positively correlated to environment. People, I mean, it is a positive correlation, 100% positive correlation to people's behavior to environmental impact.
Thank you, Councillor Burry. Mayor Kelly.
Thank you, and through you, and I haven't looked at this for some time, but let me try my memory on Ms. Crowder, because I think we were trying to make recreational carrying capacity, which is a measure of the social capacity of the water surface. We were trying to make that stand as a proxy for the environment, and essentially saying if it's over capacity for from the perspective of boating and other on-water activity, then it likely was a lake that was at capacity environmentally, and any further subdivision risks degradation from an environmental perspective. But to the extent that that's still under challenge, and I don't know where that sits, you know, I think it's kind of the opposite of us allowing something. We don't have the ability to stop something, which is kind of different.
Ms. Crowder?
Through you, Chair, and just to add on to the comments that are being made, I found the section of the official plan. So it does state that recreational carrying capacity is a measure of social carrying capacity rather than environmental capacity, and is therefore intended to augment the lake system health policies of this plan. However, it is recognized that the two factors are related. So to the mayor's point, I would just elaborate as well and say that the Muskoka official plan policies are applicable, and they do include lake system health policies as well, and categorize lakes as being vulnerable or not based on environmental factors. This lake is not currently listed on Schedule E2 of the Muskoka official plan, which is the lakes that are considered to be vulnerable at this time. So just some additional information there.
Ms. Crowder, could you explain what the clergy factor is? I could give a go at it, but I wouldn't get it right.
Absolutely, through you, Chair. So the clergy principle is a principle that's used in land use planning, and is essentially states that applications are to be reviewed at the policies that are in effect at that time that the application is made or deemed complete. So this application has been deemed complete. All of the required submissions have been made for us to evaluate the application. And we are to evaluate this application solely based on the policies that are in effect at that time. So although we know of these other policies in our official plan, those policies aren't in effect at this time. And therefore, under the clergy principle, we wouldn't consider them when we're considering these applications from a land use planning perspective.
Thank you. For those wondering where the name clergy came from, it has nothing to do with religious leaders. I believe it has to do with the name of the appellant in the case that was in court that has established this, basically common law. Is that fair to say?
You taught me something new today. Thank you.
Very good. I wasn't sure whether it's Councillor Edwards. Good. I wasn't sure. I just don't know who came up first. So take Councillor Edwards first.
If staff would check back through when the lots on the north side by Walton Road, I think there's about 8 or 9 lots there. There was a bylaw passed that prevented any more subdivision of severances, and it was in a bylaw that an old council had passed. So it could restrict any new lot addition on that lake.
Ms. Crowder, comments?
Through you, Chair Bosemarth, to Councillor Edwards. As part of the exercise of evaluating this application, staff did take a look at the other lots on the lake, and
661.
Somebody has their microphone on. Who is it? Can you turn it off, please? Yep, go ahead.
Yeah, so as part of reviewing this application, staff have looked at the other lots on the lake, and a number of them do have site-specific bylaws on them. And these bylaws do essentially lock in those lots at the frontage and area that exists today. So any future severance of those lots would require coming before council and, planning committee and council, and asking to repeal that bylaw and then applying for future severance. That doesn't specifically apply to this property that we're talking about today. Those are site-specific bylaws that are attached to the surrounding lots. I will also say that as part of the review of this application, we are conducting an analysis of how many lots could potentially be created on this lake beyond just the application before us. My calculation has come to a number of 3 lots, but I would say that all 3 of those potential lots have site-specific bylaws on them, locking in the current frontage and area. So any potential lot creation would be quite challenging. So this does look like sort of the last lot that could really be created on Ricketts Lake without foregoing future planning approvals by this group. That being said, we're kind of still working through these exercises, hence why we're hoping to gather public and agency comments given the complexity of the 2 official plans and recreational carrying capacity, and then coming to a subsequent meeting with our actual recommendation.
Supplemental.
Go ahead.
The 3 lots that are beside it, the people on the other side of the lake opposed those at the time. And that's where they brought up that there was supposed to be no new lots, that those lots were supposed to be frozen at that time. Is that not correct?
Ms. Walker? Crowder?
Through you, Chair. If I'm understanding correctly, I think Councillor Edwards is speaking to the lots directly to the east of the lot we're talking about. If you could just confirm. I know that there was a application and ultimately, I believe, in an OLT decision whereby those lots were created. But perhaps if he can clarify that I'm speaking about the right situation.
That would be right. That was the lots on the east. And at that time, it was brought up that when they got all the lots on the north side of the lake, the condition to get those lots was to freeze those lots. And that was a bylaw, I believe.
Ms. Crowder?
Through you, Chair, Councillor Edwards. That's correct. So the lots to the east couldn't be further subdivided. However, the lot we're speaking about doesn't have that site-specific bylaw associated with it. It's just that site-specific bylaw is associated with the lots to the east of the subject property.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Roberts? And then Councillor Nishikawa.
Thank you, Chair. And through you, I have three points to make, or comments or questions. First of all, during the little recess we had, I went through and searched the official plan, and my understanding is that the system utilization phosphorus removal technology statement is made on the lakes that were lake plans. The Leonard Lake, Little Long Lake, Brandon Lake, 3 Mile Lake. Those are the ones being challenged specifically. Nowhere else in the official plan could I find reference to the removal technology. So I'm asking staff if they would, between now and the next time they come back, I would like to see the possibilities of adding that since we can't do the recreation carrying capacity, and since the previous official plan was silent on this, I would like to, on these 2 lots, have the clause put in, system utilization phosphorus removal technology must be used in the future. That would be an environmental type of change. I don't think that too many people would argue with that, but would you please consider having that in your report?
Ms. Crowder, just a comment on that.
Through you, Chair, to Councillor Roberts. I appreciate your research, and I've had some time to look at it as well. And if you take a look at section E 4.4.1, that's general lot creation conditions. And then if you take a look at A subsection 3, that condition is in there. And that section is unfortunately under appeal. So I did just want to highlight that, but certainly this committee can choose to make a condition whereby this is incorporated as a consent agreement. I would just caution that because the policy is under appeal, this group doesn't have as much teeth to impose such condition at this time.
Councillor Roberts, you had another question?
Yeah, I
Or
had two
point?
other just really comments. I did also look at the asset management plan and about the roads such as Buckeye Road and 7.19 of that report. I recall, and I just confirmed it. In the report, it says that township should consider taking on these types of roads, but it doesn't say, but it applies that it's at the appetite of council. And the third thing that I'd like to say to Mr. D'Souza, I'm sorry if I did not pronounce your name right. In Ward B, we have many lakes that have the same similar situation as you do in the roads. And if you want to give me a call, I can give you some background on how their roads are managed. Thank you.
Councillor Nishikawa.
Thank you. I'm not sure after that comment if I can come up with my question again, but anyhow, I do want to, so my concern was basically, I feel like we've gotten a little off track. I understand we're trying to protect the environment and all of those things. In past, the old councils, as Councillor Edward mentioned, we would have used the documents from the district that laid out to us the lakes that were in concern environmentally. And I thought we heard that information early on. And I'm not sure where we're trying to go from here. And so I'm asking, my question is more, do we not just, I'm not trying to simplify things, but basically if the requirements under district, under this lake, we normally follow that. Is that not what we're doing any longer? And I'm sorry, my question would probably go to Bryce.
It can be a comment or a question. Mr. Sharp or Ms. Crowder or Mr. Sharp, your choice.
Thank you, Chair. Maybe I just need Ms. Councillor Nishikawa to repeat the question just to make sure that I completely understand.
Councillor Nishikawa?
In the past, we have used the district's of advice. Like they have all of their comments on all of our lakes of carrying capacity. Sorry, not recreational carrying capacity. Basically lot development and also whether things are over the threshold. So we got that information. And what I understood was, so we have that information. I'm not clear how we got off track. If it's just about the recreational carrying capacity, or are there other issues that people had? Because I'm not clear that of the concerns, honestly.
Mr. Sharp?
Thank you, and thanks for your patience, Councillor Nishikawa. I just wanted to make sure that I understood. So I think essentially what it comes down to is the district official plan doesn't contain any specific policy with respect to recreational carrying capacity. This is something that's specific to the township's official plan, and that's why in their comments there's no consideration of recreational carrying capacity. The district's focuses on the district's lake system health program, which has been in existence for quite some time, and their comments are focused on that lake system health program. In this particular instance, Ricketts Lake isn't identified on Schedule E2 of the district official plan. So there are no specific water quality concerns in terms of a green-blue algae bloom or elevated phosphorus levels that would trigger Ricketts Lake being added to Schedule E2. I think the discussion around the table this morning has largely been around recreational carrying capacity. As Ms. Crowder pointed out, that policy is under appeal. There are some environmental considerations related to recreational carrying capacity, but it's largely a measure of the lake's social carrying capacity. In this particular instance, because of the clergy principle that was explained by Ms. Crowder, our focus in this case needs to be on the old official plan, or I should say the 2013 consolidation of the official plan, which is in effect. And it doesn't contain any policy with respect to recreational carrying capacity. So that is an important distinction with respect to this particular application. So to summarize, the recreational carrying capacity policy is under appeal, and the focus is on the 2013 official plan, which again doesn't contain any specific policy to recreational carrying capacity. Hopefully that helps answer your question. I'm happy to elaborate or answer further questions if needed.
Councillor Nishikawa?
If I could further, no, I appreciate that. That's where I wanted to go back to, was basically that the district didn't have concerns about this lake necessarily, like other than what we've already read. And I don't know that we're trying to create other issues. And again, I just think that we've looked at other severances that I would have had bigger concerns about, but I would like to see this vote come forward. Thank you.
Committee, do we have any other comments before I call the vote?
Yeah, they don't know. Good point.
It's been some while. We had an interruption, so let me read it again. Moved by Councillor Mazin, seconded by Councillor Nishikawa. Be it resolved that public and agency comments be received and that staff be directed to undertake a review and analysis of the submissions with a view to providing a recommendation to Planning Committee on the application. All those in favor? Any opposed? Thank you. That carries.
It doesn't matter.
Okay. Seeing as we've already had a break, I think we will press on with the next case before we take a break. So the next one is Plan 2025-018, B434424ML and ZBA 4824, and Ms. DeMello is going to present this.
Thank you, Chair Bosworth. The next application to be heard are concurrent consent application B434424ML and zoning bylaw amendment application ZBA 4824 in the name of Wise and Dewar. Next slide, please. The subject lands are known municipally as 1030 Scarcliffe Road. I direct committee's attention to the submitted consent and zoning sketch on page 152 of the agenda package. The purpose and effect of the application is to create 2 new lots fronting Scarcliffe Road to gain exemptions from rural lot creation requirements, including minimum lot frontage and area, and to rezone a portion of the retained lot from rural RU1 to private open space OS2. Notice of this public meeting under the Planning Act was circulated 29 days in advance of this meeting, and 5 comments have been received to date. Comments were received from Nick Snyder, the township's chief building official, stating no objection to the application and that a site review will be completed when the weather permits to ensure a suitable location is available to support an on-site sewage system. Comments were received from Tim Sopcode, manager of operational services, stating no objection to the application, with a recommendation that the following conditions be implemented. that the availability of entrance permits be confirmed by the township's operational services department for the severed lots, and that a road widening across the portions of the retained lot and severed lots fronting onto Scarcliffe Road be dedicated to the township to the satisfaction of the township's operational services department. Comments were also received from Douglas Holland, Township's fire prevention officer, stating no objection, as well as the calculated fire response time and recommending that the Fire Smart Homeowners Manual be consulted to understand how treatments to the property influence wildfire spread. Comments were also received from Emily Ramler, planner at the District Municipality of Muskoka, stating that district staff are not opposed to the applications, provided that future development be located a minimum of 20 meters or 65.6 feet from the streams located on the severed lots. Comments were also received from Hydro One, stating no objection. The proposed exemptions are summarized on page 127 of the agenda package. Exemptions A, B, C, and D seek to provide an exemption from minimum lot requirements of 600 feet of lot frontage and 10 acres of lot area in the rural zone. The township's official plan has recently been updated with new rural lot creation requirements, including minimum lot frontages and areas. However, these requirements have not yet been implemented through an update to the township's comprehensive zoning bylaw. The severed lots conform to these new requirements in the official plan. Exemption E seeks to permit the creation of more than one lot from an original parcel of land as of October 13th, 1992. The newly approved official plan removes this policy restriction in favor of greater lot frontage and area requirements. Given that the zoning bylaw has not yet been updated to reflect the official plan, relief is required. Next slide, please. Staff have prepared a detailed report for committee's consideration and have recommended that consent application B 434424 be approved, subject to standard conditions of consent, including the recommended conditions from operational services regarding entrance permits and road dedications on Scarcliffe Road, and that the subject property be rezoned to permit exemptions from the maximum number of lots permitted to be created by consent in the rural zone. Staff have further recommended that zoning bylaw amendment application ZBA-4824 be approved, subject to a recommended revision to the bylaw to limit forestry operations, a hunt camp, and wayside pit and quarry uses, as well as a revision to the bylaw to require that future development be located a minimum of 65.6 feet from the stream located on the severed lots. Staff have no further comments at this time and are happy to answer any questions from committee.
Thank you very much. Do we have the applicant's agent online? And if so, could we introduce them?
Good morning.
Good morning. Good morning,
you.
and
Sorry.
name and address, and you have 5 minutes, and welcome.
Thank you, and through you, Mr. Chair. My name is Ryan Lloyd, planner with Planscape, 104 Kimberley Avenue, Bracebridge, Ontario, P1L 1Z8. I'm here representing Mr. Michael Wise and Ms. Diane DEWAR, owners of the subject lands. Thank you for this opportunity, and thanks to planning staff for their help during the process. Originally, it was Ms. Crowder and now Ms. DeMello. As indicated by the staff report, the application is to create 2 new rural lots intended for their daughters to build primary residences just outside of the Port Carling community. We have submitted our planning justification report and have reviewed Ms. DeMello's report and are supportive of the conclusions, agreeing that the application in front of you today is consistent with the PPS, conforms to the township's official plan policies, and represents good planning. The proposed lot creations were designed with a new official plan policy for lot frontage and lot area. Subsequently, the proposed lots require a zoning bylaw amendment to recognize these new lot configurations. A portion of the retained lot will be rezoned to open space and further prohibit specific uses to add a layer of protection between the waterfront area of the retained and the proposed rural lot creations. The zoning amendment will also restrict development within proximity to the existing property drainage ditch. These areas are generally not ideal for building sites, and applicants are satisfied with the recommendation. The proposed lots are quite large and have large development envelopes outside of this area. I'll leave it at that, and I'm happy to address any concerns or questions. And I believe Mr. Wise is on with us too virtually. Thanks for your time.
Thank you very much. Do we have anybody wishing to speak in support or against this application online or present? We have somebody present. All right. Good morning. Thank you for your patience. If you could state your name and address, and you have 5 minutes to tell us your thoughts. Is the mic on? We could just check there, Emma. All right.
My address is 1030-2 Scarcliffe Road. And my property would be on the west side of Mike's. I have no objections to what they're suggesting, or no objections, and I agree with what they've done. However, attached to the application are a list of suggested uses that the land could be used for. And some of those are from uses from this farm's been around for 100 years and more. And it was a rooming house at one time and took on guests, and Henry, one of the owners, would oftentimes have to go sleep in the barn to provide another bed for a paying client. So one of the suggestions that staff has made as an option for development was a hunt club, which I think is totally inappropriate and should be taken off the list. The other is quarry, and I believe staff's addressed that, and I believe they are taking it off the list. And then the other one was a kennel, a dog kennel. So, they're saying it has to be 100 feet from the lot line, but the idea of a dog kennel in a development of multi-million-dollar properties doesn't make sense to me. And then they're saying that it would support a single residence and a secondary residence and a bed and breakfast and a rooming house. And again, like the rooming house came from there's 9 bedrooms that got torn off that house when Henry took over. So my question on the as an aside is, how many buildings are allowed on these lots? I know you're allowed a primary, and I know you're allowed a secondary, but rooming houses and boarding houses, is that on top of or as part of it? And then lastly, I'm just looking for assurance that nothing's happening on the lakefront lots.
All right. Are you finished?
Yes.
Great. Well, thank you very much. I guess you can have a seat, and we will see if we can get all those points either answered or some explanation. Mr. Mello, we had a number of questions and concerns there. Could you address them?
I might help Mr.
start?
Mello
Very well.
out, and she can provide any further elaboration that may be required. But just to clarify a couple of points, staff are recommending that a quarry or wayside pit and quarry be restricted within the BOS2 zone portion of the lands, as well as within the a hunt camp within that portion of the property as well. The property is considered to be within the waterfront interface, and that's why we've recommended that those restrictions be put in place. A hunt camp wouldn't be permitted within the RU1 zone portions of the severed lots. And with respect to a kennel would be permitted as of right within the RU1 zone portions of the severed lot. If that is a concern, there certainly could be a restriction put in place to say that a kennel wouldn't be permitted on the severed lots, and same for a rooming house. A rooming house would be permitted as of right, provided the lots and the proposal met all the requirements for a rooming house. So again, if that is a concern, there could be a restriction put in place to prohibit a rooming house on the severed lots as well.
And what about the hunt camp?
So a hunt camp wouldn't be permitted on the severed lots because of the zoning. And on the retained lot, there's a portion that's proposed to be rezoned to OS2, just to provide a bit of a buffer between the severed lots and the remaining portion of the retained lot. And staff are recommending that a hunt camp be prohibited within that area. So a hunt camp, if this application is approved as recommended by staff, a hunt camp wouldn't be permitted anywhere on the subject lands.
Good, thank you. Did we cover everything? I think there was a question on number of buildings.
Through you, Chair, it's hard to say exactly how like a specific number of buildings that would be permitted on a lot, other than to say that the lot coverage would be capped at 5%, and only those buildings and structures that are related to a permitted use would be permitted. So, you know, obviously, I think the intent would be to develop each one of these severed lots with a dwelling, and there would be, you know, typical accessory buildings and structures associated with that permitted on the property. You know, maybe 2 sheds, it could be a garage, it could be 5 sheds. I don't know for sure, but ultimately they would need to comply with the zoning bylaw.
Yeah, and to be clear, the number of sheds are going to be limited by their total square footage. So if you build a large home and a fairly large secondary home, you're not going to have much left for putting extra buildings. Just, I think that's a good way to make it clear. All right. I think that answers all of those questions. Do we have anybody else in the room or online who would like to speak in favor or against or have questions about this application? Do we have any more? No. Okay. What's next? Oh, yes. Questions from committee. Committee, do we have any questions? Councillor Kent.
Thank you. And this may just be an education for me, but could you just explain, not you, but could the staff explain, please, to me, in this case, this file, we are in conformity with the OP, but not in conformity with the bylaw because it's being redone. And we're allowing them to have a reduced lot size despite the fact that anyway, we're giving them an amendment on the lot size and the footage. Whereas in the file that we just finished, I believe it's the opposite. And I'm trying to understand why here we're willing to make the concession. And in the last lot, we were unwilling to make the concession. It's the reverse. In the last file, the OP was behind the bylaw, but maybe the staff could explain to me the logic, and maybe I'm missing the point, but that was my read of the situation.
Mr. Sharp.
Thank you, Chair, and staff will acknowledge that it is a confusing situation that we're working within, the environment that we're working within. We're working with 2 official plans. The 2023 official plan that's been approved by the district is, as we know, under appeal. In this particular instance, the rural policies that are germane to the application aren't under appeal. I believe there's one policy in the rural section of the 2023 official plan that is under appeal. So given the clergy principle that came up in the last application, we would look to the old official plan for the equivalent policy, which does exist and which we have reviewed and implemented as required. But in this particular instance, as I have noted, the policies in the 2023 official plan with respect to these applications do apply. It's different than the last application that we dealt with.
And we
Councillor
don't
Kent,
expect,
did that answer your question?
Yes, and just to follow up, if you may, and we don't expect any appeal on any changes to the bylaw in the same way that we're getting appeals on the changes to the OP that would cause this situation to fall into the same category as the last one.
Mr. Sharp.
Thank you. Yes, that was the second part of your question. In this particular instance, the zoning bylaw and the official plan are out of sync. So as you know, we're undertaking a update to the zoning bylaw. And once that update is complete, the policies with respect to rural lot creation will be updated. So in this particular instance, again, to sort of confuse matters even further, the zoning bylaw provisions still the zoning bylaw still contains provisions that implement the policies of the old official plan. And hence, exemptions from those provisions are still required, but we're dealing with a new official plan.
Okay. Thank you.
Councillor Zavitz.
Thank you, and through you, a question to Emma, as it relates to page 4 of 21, which is the site-specific property details, table 3. It references under heritage, it's listed due to the presence of 2 headstones, and yet elsewhere in the report, I think I believe I read where there is a cemetery in close proximity, but it is not, does not come into play on this file. So at least that's what I thought I read. So I wonder if you could explain why it says that it's listed as a heritage piece because of 2 headstones. Just for clarification, thank you.
Mr. Mello.
Through you, Chair Bosworth. There are currently 2 headstones located on the retained lot. The subject property is currently listed on the township's cultural heritage register due to the presence of the cemetery. And I believe the severed lots are located approximately 328 feet from the headstones. So in this case, we've determined that there will be minimal to no impact on the presence of the cemetery and the headstones on the newly severed lots. Thank you.
Thank you for that. Councillor Mazin.
Thank you, and through you, just a couple of quick questions following the questions from the neighbor. I guess probably focused either on the applicant's agent or the applicant themselves. I just want to confirm that they would be satisfied with removing the dog kennel and rooming house from the permitted uses on the one property as my first question. And then the second question that I think I heard the neighbor ask was just confirmation that nothing is happening on the water side lots as well. And I recognize that they're separate, but I just think for assurance.
Mr. Lloyd, could you answer those questions for us?
I'm sure in terms of development on the water side of things, no, there's no planned development on that side. In terms of the kennel, I believe that would be supported, but I also don't want to speak for Mr. Wise. I think he is on. Maybe that could he be brought up to answer that?
Is Mr. Wise on? And could you bring him in?
Maybe he's only watching. Maybe he's not on the actual Zoom link. There is no intentions that I know that he is planning on having a kennel. These properties are meant for dwellings for his 2 daughters, so I don't imagine that that restriction will be unsupported.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Any more questions? Then let me read the resolution. We can continue on with comments and further questions if needed. Oh, yes, sir. I'm sorry. Yes. Can you come up to and speak to the on the mic so that the population can hear, or those online can hear us?
It was the same question that about to make sure that nothing's going to happen with lakefront frontage for boathouse sizing or dock widths or area covered, or just to make sure that, because this has already been part of a zone change back in 2012, I believe.
Mr. Sharp, Mr. Mello, who would like to answer that one? So I think the point is that perhaps in 2012 there was a requirement that didn't allow docks. Is that what you're saying, sir?
There's actually a boathouse and a dock put in there without a building permit.
I see. Where they were removed?
They had to request a variance, and when we got this all legalized back in 2012. So I just want to make sure that no more is happening on Lake.
I see.
Because on that one, they did reduce the amount of frontage required.
Very well. Mr. Sharp?
Thank you. I'll defer to Ms. DeMello to speak
All right.
to the nature of past applications. But I just wanted to make certain that in this particular instance, the application in front of us doesn't deal with any development on the shoreline portion of the property. The owner could, of course, develop their property in compliance with the zoning bylaw at any time, subject to a building permit. But I'll defer to Ms. DeMello to go over the details of the past planning approval.
Mr. Mello?
Through you, Chair Bosworth. A zoning bylaw amendment application was approved in 2018 for cumulative dock width and cumulative first-story boathouse width, and the subject application won't have any impact on that past approval on the property.
All right, so I think to net that out, sir, that whatever there is existing, it had some approval, and if they wanted to change that, they would have to come back through a process with the township to change whatever is existing. Okay. Mr. Sharp?
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to provide one more point of clarification for Mr. Westcott. I believe he had a concern about a wayside pit or quarry that is permitted as of right in the RU1 zone. Staff have recommended that use be restricted within the OS2 zone portion of the retained lot. I would just note that a wayside pit or quarry is essentially a temporary pit or quarry that would be used by a public authority. In this case, would likely be the township. And I wouldn't expect that a wayside pit or quarry would be utilized on either one of the severed lots. But again, if planning committee saw reason to restrict that use on the severed lots, we could do that as well.
Thank you. Thank you very much, sir. Committee, I'm going to read the fairly lengthy motion. Moved by Councillor McIntyre, seconded by Councillor Zavitz. Be it resolved that consent application B43/44/24ML be approved subject to the following conditions. That a satisfactory registrable description deed for each of the severed lots, together with any required rights of way or easements, be submitted to the township along with a registered copy of the reference plan. The confirmation received from the township that the retained and severed lots are satisfactory for on-site sewage disposal and that any problems identified with any existing sewage system be corrected to the township's satisfaction. That the availability of entrance permits be confirmed by the township's operational services department for the severed lots. That a road widening across the portions of the retained lot and severed lots fronting onto Scarcliffe Road be dedicated to the township to the satisfaction of the township's operational services department. The cash in lieu of parkland be dedicated to the township in the amount of 5% of the assessed value of the newly created vacant lots or the entire land, whichever is left. If cash in lieu of parkland is paid for the assessed value of the entire land, this condition will be deemed complete for application B4344/24ML, and that a zoning application be approved to zone portions of the retained lot and to address rural lot creation requirements, including minimum lot frontage and lot area requirements. So committee, there were two other.
All goes on. I think that's where the restrictions would go.
Oh, sorry.
Correct, Dan?
Yeah, okay, yeah, that's
Further
true.
restrictions would go.
Yeah, restrictions wouldn't go on this one. So this was just the consent application. So it's a separate application. So any discussions on that? Oh, Mr. Wise, I gather you are online now? If you would like to speak, Mr. Wise, please turn on your microphone and not mandatory, but if you could turn on your camera as well, but your mic would just be fine. And we address the question of the kennel, I think it was. Mr. Wise, if you could unmute your connection. All right, well, if you can see, if he unmutes in a minute, let me know. All right, so I've read the resolution for the consent application. Are there any questions or discussions? Seeing none, all those in favor? Any opposed? Seeing none, that carried. The zoning bylaw amendment is moved by Councillor Burry, seconded by Councillor Kent. Be it resolved that zoning bylaw amendment application ZBA 48/24 be approved subject to the following revisions to the draft bylaw. That a forestry operation, hunt camp, and wayside pit and quarry be prohibited within the open space private OS2 zoned portion of the retained lot, and that future development be set back 65.6 feet from the stream located on the severed lots. So any discussion on that? We wanted, I think, potentially to add the prohibition of a kennel. How does committee feel about that? Is that necessary? Generally, all right. So I generally get a sense that people.
Roberts.
Councillor Roberts, thank you. I have trouble seeing that screen. Councillor Roberts?
Thank you, Chair. I'd be hesitant to include that, given Mr. Wise is not available and the agent can't speak to it. Maybe one of his daughters is planning a kennel, so I just would be hesitant to support it without input from the property owner.
All right. I got a sense around the table that most of us thought that that was a good thing to add in. We just get a show of thumbs, please. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So 5, 6, sort of. I think so. It sounds like it's something we'd like to put in there. I think there's always an opportunity to have it. If we heard from the applicant that was strongly against it, his planner suggested that that probably wasn't going to be the case. It could always be taken out. Mr. Sharp, could it be taken out before as it comes to council?
Yes, it certainly could if committee recommends imposing added restrictions, and if council has second thoughts, then they could be taken out of the bylaw at that time. Thank you.
Mr. Lloyd, is that satisfactory to you?
Yes, thank you.
All right. I've read the resolution. Any further discussion? I'm sorry, we are amending it. Thank you. Do we have we have to go?
We just have a minute. It's kennel rooming housing. So they're part of the.
Oh yeah, what about rooming houses?
Bed and breakfast. I wasn't sure. That wasn't correct, was it?
No, I don't think
Or about the rooming houses in the kennel, if I'm not mistaken.
I think that's the only thing.
Mr. Sharp, your thoughts on prohibiting a rooming house?
You know, I don't have any strong objection to a rooming house on the property, provided it complied with the zoning provisions. I understand it is a concern of Mr. Westcott, as is a kennel and a wayside pet and quarry. So if committee wants to put forward a recommendation to council to restrict those aspects, then that can be done. But a rooming house is permitted as of right in the RU1 zone. The zoning isn't changing. So, you know, I'd leave it at that at this point.
And would it be fair to say that even if we put it in, further application could be brought forward to revise it? Is that correct?
Yes, that is correct.
All right.
Would the rooming house not get caught by the septic provisions that Mr. Snyder was talking to us about yesterday?
I think we just heard that if they wanted to change the use from a single family dwelling,
right,
put in they'd have to come forward and have an application at that time, and it could all be dealt with or not approved at that time. So it's I think the sense we should probably just not restrict it because it's a permitted use. And Mr. Sharp, we've already prohibited a wayside pit in the resolution.
So we're just looking at a kennel?
So we're just looking at any kennels. Mr. Sharp?
Through you, Chair, I believe you've restricted a wayside pit or quarry in the OS2 zone portion of the retained lot.
Yes, you're right. Thank
not
you.
Within the severed lot. So if that's a consideration, it would need to be included as well.
we don't want a wayside quarry anywhere, then we should include it everywhere, I would think. So that means they'd be allowed on the residential portions?
Through you, Chair, I actually don't have a lot of experience with wayside pit or quarries. They don't come up, very often in my experience, but they have been included as a permitted use within the many of the rural zones. And I think largely the purpose is if the township needed to obtain sand or gravel or some type of aggregate for road building purposes, then they would have the ability to perhaps utilize those lands to obtain that material. But in my experience, 10 years here, I've never actually, dealt with operational services. My sense is
it only the township that can request?
Yeah, it's by a public authority.
I see. But so the district couldn't request?
The district could as well.
I see.
Yeah.
Mr. Westcott, if you come up and if you'd like to comment, and then if you can turn them, or somebody turn the mic on for him.
Yeah, okay. So the existing property was a farm, and it was like that for 100 and so odd years. And at some point in time, Henry, one of the owners, and his father and his son, they were builders, and so they did this pit for their own private job sites, and so they put in septic tanks using sand from there and backfilled where there was no backfill to be had, and so that's what that was used for. But around 1993, they retired the pit, and they've replanted it, and it's now naturalized. Okay, and I believe that the reason why this quarry is coming up is because, again, it had been allowed way back when.
All right, thank you very much. All right, so we have questions. Councillor Nishikawa, you have your hand up, I think.
Sorry, I'm a little bit concerned that we're getting very, very restrictive on a pretty simple severance application. And I would say we're not this restrictive on other properties closer to the water. And I'm just very concerned that we're going down a route that is not going to be defendable. And I know in past applications, while it hasn't come back to bite us necessarily, people have appealed some of these things because while we can all say, sure, they can always come back, but at whose cost? So if they do want a kennel on 10 acres of property, which is from a rural perspective, I think that that's acceptable. I just think we're getting very, very restrictive when we haven't done this to other properties. And so I would have to really have a solid understanding of what makes this property any different than any other rural property that we have to take away the basic rights. And honestly, I don't know anybody that's going to go and open up a pit tomorrow on their rural property, because there's a whole different prescription about that. I just think that we're going down the wrong route.
Thank you. Councillor Mazin, and then Councillor Edwards.
Thank you, and through you. I think the spirit, what I've heard from the applicant's agent, it's I think the applicant may be having difficulty getting on from the looks or sounds of things, but is that the intention here is to build 2 new homes for their daughter. I think that's what I heard from you, Mr. Lloyd. And just having a fairly good sense of this property. It's a beautiful farmland, and I think that's what the neighbor is also saying. And there's obviously a long history that I'm not even aware of on this particular property. I think with the intention on use and knowing that the applicant owns property on a lot of different sides of this, I think it's up to, I think we need to also hear from them as to the limitations. I don't get the sense that they'd have any concern with a quarry or a hunt camp being removed. I think the definition of a kennel probably just needs to be understood, and perhaps just to expedite this portion of the meeting, we could put those restrictions in, knowing that next month it would give time for the applicant actually to make comment if they have an issue, and allow our planners to have the conversation, the planners, to make sure that it's kind of clearly understood. That would be kind of my thoughts at this point, that it seems generally in principle, we're all okay with the severance. We're all okay with the use. We're just trying to make sure we have a clear understanding of the use on both of these properties. And I think, it looks like Mr. Wise might actually be on, and he may be able to help address some of these questions. So.
Mr. Wise, are you on? Is that you?
I don't
You
know
have
if-
to unmute yourself. I don't see him.
I saw him. I see his.
He is here.
He's here, but he's not. But he doesn't have his mic on. Councillor Edwards.
Yes, thank you very much through the chair. This is not a 10-acre lots that you're talking about, and that they're asking for a 3.6 acre reduction and a 4 acre reduction. So I would leave the restriction in for the kennels, and we can always deal with it later. But I think that's a fair compromise. Thank you.
All right, committee, I think we are going to take a couple of minutes, and we're going to revise the amendment and put in a restriction for kennel. And if we get feedback from the owner that that's fine, and if not, we'll have some discussion at council. So just give us 2 or 3 minutes to do that, and then we'll be back and we'll go through the final approval for the zoning bylaw amendment. On further research, it turns out that a kennel requires a minimum of 10 acres, and neither of these severed lots are 10 acres. So by bylaw, kennels are not allowed. So we don't need to muck around with that. Did I already read this?
Yeah.
So
I think so.
yes, I did read this. So everybody happy? You don't want me to read it again? All right. Any final discussions on this application? Councillor Mazin?
I just want to confirm it's a bit confusing here on this end. I just want to confirm that there's the hunt camp and wayside pit is also excluded, right?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
In the OS too, and they're not allowed in.
Okay, but
all right. All right. So any further discussion? All those in favor? Any opposed? Carried. Okay, we will have a break until 10 after. We're live? Where's our remote committee members?
Lost interest. Oh, the integrity commissioner is going to be out.
Oh, Christ, he's already calling me. Oh, you.
You do know we can hear everything you're saying about us.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I.
This does not.
Councillor Edwards.
Yes.
I had your name on a seconder of the motion. We read the inspection fees, the phase 2 inspection fees. I just want I don't know whether you heard that or not. I just want your.
I didn't.
Is it all right that you are, is it okay that you're the seconder on that?
Sure.
Thank you. All right, the next item on our list is report plan 2025-019. It is a consent and zoning application. Report B51/24M L and ZBA 4924, and Ms. DeMello is going to talk to us about this.
Thank you, Chair Bosworth. The next applications to be heard are concurrent consent application B5124ML and zoning bylaw amendment application ZBA-49/24 in the name of Bolton. Next slide, please. The subject lands are known municipally as 4628 Aspden Road. I would direct committee's attention to the submitted consent sketch on page 206 of the agenda package. The purpose and effect of the subject application is to create one new rural lot, to rezone a portion of the newly created lot to environmental protection, EP1, to restrict future development to a potential development envelope, and to gain exemptions from section 6.141A of the township zoning bylaw. Notice of this public meeting under the Planning Act was circulated 29 days in advance of this meeting, and 5 comments have been received to date. Comments were received from Nick Snyder, the township's chief building official, stating no objection to the application, and that a site review will be completed when the weather permits to ensure a suitable location is available to support an on-site sewage system. Comments were received from Tim Sopko, manager of operational services, stating no objection to the application, with a recommendation that severance approval be subject to confirmation from the District of Muskoka of the availability of an entrance permit for the severed lot. Comments were also received from Douglas Holland, the township's fire prevention officer, stating no objection, as well as a calculated fire response time, and recommending that the Fire Smart Homeowners Manual be consulted to understand how treatments to the property influence wildfire spread. Comments were also received from Emily Ramler, planner at the District Municipality of Muskoka, stating that district staff are not opposed to the applications, provided the following be included as conditions of consent. 1, that the applicant obtain a written confirmation from the District of Muskoka that an entrance permit for the severed and retained lots can be issued for access onto the district road, and that the lands be subject to an agreement with the District Municipality of Muskoka pursuant to section 5126 of the Planning Act, as amended, respecting the location of wells in relation to the district road. Comments were also received from Hydro One, stating no objection to the application. Next slide, please. The proposed exemptions are summarized on page 180 of the agenda package. The first exemption seeks to permit the creation of more than one lot from an original parcel of land as of October 13th, 1992. The newly approved official plan removes this policy restriction in favor of greater lot frontage and area requirements. Given that the zoning bylaw has not yet been updated to reflect the official plan, relief is required. The second exemption seeks to restrict buildings and structures to an identified development envelope on the severed lot in accordance with the recommendations of a scoped environmental impact study prepared by Astor Environmental Services, which was completed to assess a wetland located on the severed lot. Next slide, please. Staff have prepared a detailed report for committee's consideration and have recommended that consent application B5124 be approved,
subject to standard conditions of consent, including the recommended conditions from district staff, that the subject property be rezoned to permit exemptions from the maximum number of lots permitted to be created by consent in the rural area zone, that the severed lot be made subject to site plan control, and that the owner enter into a consent agreement to implement the recommendations of the submitted environmental impact study. Staff have further recommended that a zoning bylaw amendment application ZBA 4924 be approved, subject to a recommended revision to Schedule 3 to require a 30.5 meter setback from the lot line abutting the scenic corridor on the severed lot. Staff have no further comments at this time and are happy to answer any questions from committee.
Thank you very much. Does the applicant have an agent? I don't think they do very well. And do we have anybody wishing to speak for or against this application? All right. What's his name? Mr. Fulton. Mr. Fulton, if you are online and would like to speak to committee, please let us know or turn on your microphone and video. If not, we will proceed. All right, seeing no.
Sorry,
There we are.
Yeah, sorry about that. Yes, I am online, and I guess the only thing I would like to say is I did get the have a pre-consult with the district as far as the entrance, and they have given me a an approval to put an entrance into the retained lot. And they're just subject on me getting the actual severance. So that part of the one of the conditions that were in there has already basically been met. The district has told me, like, once I get the severance from the township, I just need to provide that proof to them with the survey. And I will be issued the entrance permit. And then with respect to the pre-consult with the township, I just want to, I did agree and meet with any of the conditions that were brought up by the township, like as far as minimum frontages, lot sizes, etc. So really in my opinion, the biggest condition I had here was getting that zoning bylaw amendment so I could create an additional lot.
All right, thank you very much. Committee, do we have any questions of Mr. Mello or the owner? Seeing none, let me read the consent application resolution. Moved by Councillor Roberts, seconded by Councillor Mazin. Be it resolved that consent application B51/24 ML Fulton be approved subject to the following conditions. That a satisfactory registerable description of the severed lot together with any required rights of way or easements be submitted to the township along with a registered copy of the reference plan. The confirmation be received that the township is satisfied that the severed and retained lots are satisfactory for on-site sewage disposal and that any problems identified with any existing sewage systems be corrected to the satisfaction of the township. The cash in lieu of parkland be dedicated to the township in the amount of 5% of the assessed value of the newly created vacant lot or the entire lands, whichever is less. That the severed lots be made subject to site plan control. That the applicant obtain written confirmation from the District of Muskoka that an entrance permit for the severed and retained lots can be issued for access onto the district road. The lands be subject to an agreement with the municipality of the District Municipality of Muskoka pursuant to Section 51(26) of the Planning Act, RSO 1990, as amended, respecting the locations of wells in relations to the district road. That the owner enter into a consent agreement with the township pursuant to Section 51(26) of the Planning Act. Said agreement shall be registered against the title of the lands and contains provision to the satisfaction of the township whereby the owners agree to implement the recommendations of the scoped environmental impact study prepared by Astor Environmental Services Limited, dated October the 28th, 2024, and that a rezoning application be approved to rezone part of the severed lot to provide an exemption from the rural lot creation requirements and to restrict buildings and structures to an identified envelope. Identified envelope. Committee, any comments, questions on that? No, I call the vote then. All those in favor? Any opposed? That carries. Now the zoning bylaw amendment application, moved by Councillor Zavitz, second by Councillor Nishikawa. Be it resolved that zoning bylaw amendment application ZBA 49/24 Fulton be approved subject to the following: that a revision be made to the Schedule 3 of the bylaw to require a 30.5 meter setback from the lot line abutting the scenic corridor on severed Lot 1. Any discussion? All those in favor? Any opposed? That's carried. Councillor Councillor Roberts, I think you're frozen. I'm assuming you voted in favor. Even if you did, it doesn't matter.
Should saw rigor mortis.
All right, the next item on our, so thank you very much for that, Ms. DeMello. The next item is a report from Director of Development Services and Environmental Sustainability on the previous report we had on the greenhouse gas inventory and climate change mitigation plan. So Ms. Huff, Director Huff.
Thank you, Chair. To the committee. So this report is a follow-up of a report that was presented previously to the December 12th Planning Committee, which provided committee the final draft version of the greenhouse gas inventory and climate change mitigation plan. And so staff provided this document to committee and provided a number of months for the committee to review and provide comments to staff before it was brought back for final adoption. So since December, staff did receive one comment and did not identify any aspects of the plan that required to be modified from the time that it was first brought forward in December. And so accordingly, staff are recommending that committee recommend to council the adoption of the plan. We would note that this recommendation would mean that the details of that plan would be considered at future capital budget considerations, and future decisions about assets can be incorporated in further iterations and updates to this plan as well. So I'll leave it there. Happy to answer any questions that committee might have.
Thank you. Councillor Zavitz.
Thank you, and through you. Again, to my peers here, you know, I was the one that responded, and I guess my response was following on the heels of the American president being elected, et cetera, and a lot of the words around, you know, the rhetoric about the climate, and you know, here we are living it firsthand in Muskoka with 17 feet of snow since sometime in November. I spent a lot of time reading this, and you know, this is as I understand it, a $25 million commitment over 25 years to this plan. And so, you know, if no one else responded to it, if that is, I guess if that reflects complete agreement, then let's vote. But 25 million, essentially $1 million a year for the next 25 years, or however you want to break up $25 million. That's the commitment that this plan makes to our taxpayers. And I know we had a lot of discussion about it, and there's an excellent report by our director. I'm just wondering if we as a committee don't want to spend a bit more time on this, because even if just nothing more than the financial impacts, $1 million a year. A year ago, we voted to add another $1 million to reserves just because it seemed like it made sense. This is 25 times that. This is major. This is more than just buying a new Chev that you can plug into a wall. This is serious commitment over 25 years that we are saddling the next councils with. And so I'm just sort of saying, I'm wondering if it doesn't need a bit more discussion. If it doesn't, then it doesn't. But I think this is a serious financial implication to our township. In fact, if I might, the share piece for the new hospital, which isn't going to happen for years, this isn't going to happen for years either. And it's $25 million. So I just wanted to make sure that everybody else grasped it the way I did and saw it in the same regard or your own ways, and maybe you want to share that. Thank you.
Committee, any comments? Thank you, Councillor Zavitz. Those are very interesting and informed comments. Mayor Kelly.
Thank you, and through you, and I want to just key off what Councillor Zavitz said. I mean, as committed as we are to this cause, there's kind of a gap between expectation and the cost and how we're going to cover the cost. And I think it would be irresponsible to move forward on a commitment that's of that size and nature without having first understood how we're going to fund it.
Any other comments? Councillor Mazin.
Thank you, and through you. It's interesting. I was rereading the report yesterday, and the actual report as well as the actual document. And I think how staff have kind of shaped their approach would somewhat align with the thinking that we're, I think, feeling, which is, yes, there's a huge significant hit financially and otherwise. But as I read the report, it was I'm reading it as staff is acknowledging that as well, and that these decisions we will continue to be able to make as time goes on, and perhaps using our previous CAO's adage of crawl, walk, run. Like, let's make sure we do things well. In the same way we're trying to approach things really throughout the township, thoughtfully, with evidence. Did these pieces of technology work? Did they not? I think we've started, and perhaps the only electrical thing we have currently right now is that Zamboni. And maybe that's the appropriate way for us to be doing this, is kind of a crawl, walk, run approach, which is, as I read the report, the kind of the approach that staff is saying. We now have the information, we now have data, and that would help shape future decision making. So I think I'm agreeing with what Councillor Zavitz has said and Mayor Kelly, but also supporting the idea that we have the data and the information now to hopefully make good decisions as we move forward. Because I think, technology, there's always going to be new technology, and there's always going to be an analysis on technology that exists and whether or not works in our climate or not. And I think just taking a kind of a thoughtful approach on it is probably the prudent way for us to take this. So I appreciate the work, staff. Thank you.
Any other comments? Councillor Zavitz.
Thank you, and through you. And I don't want to beat a dead horse, but this is what's coming. And if I might, as I understand it, 2050 is the target date, and the good director can clarify that. But I believe it, and the reason I use the 25 million is, we have 25 years to find 25 million just for this very specific purpose. And if we bless it today and say, sure, we're going to do this, this is great, let's go, but we don't have any realistic timelines. So, are we going to allocate $1 million a year starting in 2026 to get to 2050, and then there will be the 50 million, or the 25 million expenditure that would get us a long way towards this basket of goodies here, if you will. And it will account for a number of changes that we're going to see, socioeconomic changes that we're going to see over the next, 4 years. Well, Canada, look what we're into in terms of elections, et cetera. So we don't know what we're going to be doing provincially, federally, and or North American wise. But are we going to make a $1 million commitment every year starting in 2026 to 2050 to fuel this plan that we just are going to embrace? Because this is a $25 million expenditure. And if we push it off till 2040 and we start saving, somebody starts saving in 2040, we will have lost the benefit of 2025 to 2040. And all of a sudden, oh my gosh, how are we going to fuel that? How are we going to pay for that commitment we made back in 2025? So I'd like to see this including some sort of a financial commitment. I mean, are we going to be bold enough? Where are we going to get another $1 million out of our taxpayers, given our 2 last years of budget? So that's where I think this group should have some chat. Thank you.
Councillor Mazin.
Thank you, and through you. Just a quick clarification, maybe from staff, that does this plan commit us to financial obligation today? Or how does, from an implementation standpoint, as I was reading it, we're receiving and adopting this report, but from an implementation standpoint, perhaps how does staff see this roll out?
Director Huff.
Thank you, Chair. To Committee Member Mazan. So it does not commit us to funding the full breadth of this program. What it provides us is a resource to review at the time that we have capital budget discussions or asset discussions, and considerations with respect to energy consumption and energy desires to reduce that consumption when we make those decisions. So when we come forward, for instance, to purchase vehicles, we may assess, when push comes to shove, when we purchase new vehicles, are we going to utilize a commitment in this plan to purchase an EV vehicle? Is the technology in place that we're comfortable with? And then make a decision based on that. So I hope I've provided some clarity to committee members.
Thank you. Committee, any other comments? I'd like to give some comments on this. Oh, sorry, is that Councillor Roberts? Yeah, go ahead, Councillor Roberts.
I apologize for clicking it at the last moment, Chair, and just thank you for recognizing me. Again, what I've heard is this is a plan, and that there is no commitment. But I think with that what I propose is that somehow, be it staff or be it the members of the public or a working committee, that we sort of come up with an execution plan or an implementation plan, or what we really could do and what we cannot do, because we're going to buy vehicles. We're going to put over the next few years and stuff like that. So some of that money is already, we know we're going to spend it, even if we didn't have this. So I'm just suggesting that we need not to wait till budget next year. We need to actually sit down and sort of break it up and say, how are we going to do this? So those are my thoughts.
Thank you. I find this report incredibly useful, and the good thing about it is that we have it, because if we didn't have it, we would be walking blind. So it is fundamental for our understanding about how we are going to participate in this country's efforts to bring greenhouse gas reductions. It is not a commitment, but without it, we would be helpless. I think the environment is going to shift in places that we don't know going forward, either politically or technology wise. And having this plan as this report as a base will be the foundation for us to make well-informed, intelligent decisions about how quickly we move, what we do. We've already had some discussions. I think, we had a discussion about an air source heat pump, and we had some really interesting challenges on that, and we decided not to do it, although I think we're reconsidering that now because things have changed. But to have the total picture in front of us is going to help us prioritize when we have to make those decisions. So I'm fully in support of receiving this, understanding that it is informational and there's not a commitment, although there's clearly a desire for us to participate along with the rest of our country in getting our greenhouse gases down. So any more comments? All right, thank you very much, Ms. Director Huff. Oh, we have a resolution to accept it. Thank you. Moved by Councillor Zavitz. Thank you. We can't hear you yet, if you're talking.
Sorry, given the recommendation, which is of course a resolution to accept, to adopt this, I'm wondering if council or if committee would have an appetite to make some sort of a commitment to, and in terms of the wording, something like, and consideration of the 2026 budget to actually acknowledge that we will, it's more than just, we've accepted a lot of plans over the years. Sure. It's another thing to be committed to it and to actually start a process. So I'm just wondering if people have an appetite to actually put in here and to consider, something X in the 2026 budget relating to this plan. I mean, that's commitment right there.
You've got something sitting on top of your mic. We could barely hear the last part, but let me read the resolution and then I think we can address that point.
Yeah,
moved by Councillor Edwards, seconded by Councillor Burry. Be resolved that committee recommend to council that the greenhouse gas inventory and climate change mitigation plan attached as Appendix 1 to report DSES 2025-005 be adopted. Committee, Councillor Zavitz has made a suggestion that we put a little more teeth behind this to ensure that we address it in the upcoming budget. I think that's what you said, Councillor Zavitz. Any discussion on that around committee and the desire to put a little more into the resolution? Councillor Roberts.
Thank you. I'm supportive of getting started on this, but I think at the budget time, it's too late. I think we've got to start the discussion pertaining to this a long time before the budget so that we don't bog down the whole budget discussion.
Mayor Kelly.
Just further to that, thank you, and through you, I think I don't think we have a plan until we have a concrete funding arrangement, and so I think I'm happy to receive it, or I'm happy to receive it with the caveat that we need to, crystallize the plan with the proposed arrangements to finance this, and the source of funds may be just alternate purchases. I don't know, but we need to be pretty specific. Otherwise, it's frankly just. It just becomes token. I don't want this to be token. If we're going to really commit to this, we need to commit to it. But that means we have to understand how we're going to finance it, how we're going to fund the program itself.
Are you then suggesting we should add to the resolution to start thinking about that?
It's not approved until we approve the funding arrangement. So we have to start thinking about it. We've started thinking about it. We haven't got anything concrete.
Yeah.
I will receive it with a commitment that we put together a group of people to figure out how it gets funded. And maybe it gets funded by simply just diverting existing commitments into green energy kind of compliant vehicles or equipment.
And we also don't know how much funding we might get from other levels of government, which, depending on that's another, I think, a fairly large factor. It was Councillor Edwards first. Oh, sorry, Councillor Roberts. And then Councillor Burry.
Sorry, I had left my hand up.
Okay, Councillor Burry.
So one of the pieces that we need to look at instead of just the hard $1 million a year, and something that municipalities don't do very well, is the total cost of ownership of whatever we're looking at. We tend to, as a municipality, look at this is the cost of buying a truck, and that's the truck, and we have it for 5 years or more. But we don't look at the total cost of ownership. What does the fuel cost? All of the various things. If we buy a heat pump, what's the total cost of ownership? So, you know, to talk about a nebulous number of $1 million a year is very simplistic. And one of the things that whatever we do as a plan has got to be looking at this total cost of ownership. When we have a community center, it's probably 50 years, maybe it's 75. And so if we're looking at replacing a roof, maybe we look at a green roof, and what does that do to the internal heating and cooling and capacity of the building? Maybe we put solar panels on, and yes, that's going to help us in the summer, and not so much on a day like today when they're going to be covered with, you know, a foot of snow. But it's a complex space that I think we need to at least acknowledge we're going to do something, because the environment is what we have. I mean, anyone that says we want to diversify our economy better think about how we diversify it in and around the lakes, because that's what we've got. We're not going to get industry. We're not getting car parts here. Like, you know, maybe we can get some fiber optics in a data center because it's cold enough that we actually don't have to cool today. We just open the doors. But that a little bit facetious, but there are these things that we need to look at it, and it's not just outlaying $1 million a year. It's so much further than that. And you know, I don't know. I as a council and as a staff, we need to think far more broadly about the kinds of things we want to do and how we want to do them and how long they are. This is, you know, in my world, I look at a quarter, not as 3 months, but a quarter of a century.
Councillor Nishikawa, and then Councillor Mazin.
Thank you. Thank you, Guy. It was sort of going where I was going. But I also I guess my question was going to be to the mayor, and if his understanding of, like, I can't help but link this to other district programs and what may be coming in the future, because we've now hired on that many more people and different things. And I'm just curious if we just accept this, and then again, I'm more interested in what we're piggybacking with or not, like you know, not, and if there's those opportunities, and much like Guy says, this is a long-term plan. I don't know that anybody, maybe David is, but a scientist around the table, I'm just saying that the plan is a good plan from what I read, but I am not an expert at all. And I want acceptance first, and then all of the other challenges that go with it, like what are we going to purchase, all of those kind of things, is a further conversation. And when that happens, I would have to look at staff of when the availability, when a further discussion could go. I don't think we're prepared to have those conversations today.
Mayor Kelly.
Thank you, and through you, and you raised a really good question, because one of the things that we experienced, all of us on district council, during I think 2 successive years in the budget process, is a young fellow that delegated to us, who was an employee of the district, who basically said, we're not doing the job because we adopted a plan, or whatever we did with the plan, but we didn't actually commit to it. And I mean, that was my takeaway in what he was saying. We've got a hope, but hope doesn't matter to anybody until you commit. And I don't think we can commit till we know the all-in cost, or whatever Councillor Burry called it. I completely agree. I think it's a terrific aspirational document, and we should be guided by it. But I don't think that's enough in this day and age. We need to commit to something. And if we're going to commit to something, if I'm going to support committing to something, I need to know a lot more than just what we hope to do. How are we going to do it? And I think that's the piece that's missing. So the other problem that we have with district is there's very likely going to be a lot of overlap and a lot of duplication. And that's not helpful. But we heard, those of us who were in the chair, twice the same young man came up and very eloquently called his employers to task for failing to do anything more than the window dressing of putting our hand up when a plan was put in front of us and then not following through on it. We have to follow through.
Councillor Mazin?
Thank you, and through you, perhaps a question back to staff then, Director Huff. Looking at the report, and I'm looking specifically at the Muskoka Lakes Climate Change Mitigation Plan that's incorporated into the report. It identifies a list of actions to be taken in the short term and into the long term. Are those things that then get contemplated? Like, are those the things that are being included into our asset management plan? And as we, like, I'll pick on the first thing. It says under 4.1.1, replace the rooftop RTU units with an air source heat pump in the administrative buildings, Port Carling Arena and Port Carling Community Center. Are those the types of things that become kind of a part of our asset management plan and part of our capital plan? Is it like, this is the actual feet on the street actions, I think, that we're talking about? So how does staff, I guess, envision this getting rolled out?
Director Huff.
Thank you, Chair, through to you, Committee Member Mazan. So those specific items, both in the short term and the long term recommendations of our section of the report, are the boots on the ground kind of considerations that we would make at a time when we were considering upgrades to community centers or arenas and things like that. It doesn't necessarily compel us to do those things because there can be considerations at the time. If we're looking at our service delivery review and we're considering consolidating facilities, perhaps we make a decision, for instance, at a township level that one of these facilities is going to be maybe enlarged and other ones would be reduced in number, right? So we might not actually do, say, a heat pump replacement for a building that we know we might shutter in a few years. So this is a starting place for those decisions when we're considering asset renewals or builds or additions and things. And again, the same applies to the green fleet. So every year we are updating vehicles. So this report now would necessitate staff to consider, is now the right time to start replacing the EV, the smaller vehicles with EV vehicles. Now that this plan would be in place, that would be part of our core decision making. And so some of the pieces will become, you'll see some of the results of some of those implementations quicker than you will some of the other pieces, just because there's a number of larger decisions that the municipality has to make with respect to its facilities. And you would want to make those decisions before you start committing to making various upgrades and things. So I hope that provides some context.
I think what I heard you say was that now that we have this document, every time we are making a decision on something that might be included in this document, we are going to be compelled to give consideration to complying with, or at least considering and perhaps complying with this document. Is that, so what I'm getting a sense is that we are now going to use this document, becomes embedded in our decision-making process. Every major decision-making process, we're going to have to consider this. It doesn't answer the mayor's question, but at least it keeps it out the front. Mayor Kelly?
Thank you, and through you. And I'm just concerned that it sets us up for the same kind of feedback. Every budget that we looked at and declined on, or walked away from, or didn't have the money for, or redirected the resource, because we don't have a real hard plan to implement We have a aspiration to be somewhere at some point in the near future, but not really a roadmap to get there. I don't want to have Mr. Sharp up here chastising us for not following through on the plan.
Councillor Berry?
Thank you, Chair Bosworth. So I think part of the difficulty that we're having here, Your Worship, is that we as a municipality have not determined very well how to calculate the total cost of ownership. And so we make decisions based on purchase price and not the whole piece. 25 years is a very long time, and lots of things could change. We could change all of our vehicles from fossil fuel to electric, but we could also decide to put in a small modular nuclear plant somewhere in the township. That these are very safe technologies, and they're not ready for prime time, but 25 years is a long time. 25 years ago, most of us didn't have internet. And it's pretty, ubiquitous now. So let's be careful. We can start to make decisions as we gain more knowledge. A plan can be aspirational. It doesn't have to have hope as part of the implementation strategy, because I agree with you. Hope does not focus or is not a very good implementation strategy. But I do believe that we can start to think about every behavior we're going to have needs to have a mirror that we reflect on and determine. And maybe it is spending more money on an air source heat pump than putting in a conventional boiler, because the 20 years it's going to pay back. And making those decisions not for this term of council and being elected 2 years from now, but saying, you know what, this is the best for the township as a whole, whether that community center is in one center or another, so that we start making decisions for the township as a whole and looking at that total cost. It is not a simple factor. And we may need more expertise in-house to be able to do that. And there's lots of new technologies that combined in places make a significant difference. I hope that's not too much of a lecture.
Any further comments? CEO Pink, do you have any reflections on this topic and what we have a resolution read. We're hearing some very fundamental philosophical discussions on this topic. What are your thoughts?
Thank you. Through you, I don't have too much to add, but what I would say is I'm glad that council or committee is having this discussion. I think it recognizes the breadth and the commitment you are making. It is significant, and that's why staff gave committee council 2 months to give consideration to it. There was minimal comments received, so I'm glad that the significance of it is weighing on you. It is a commitment. I think maybe that word is perhaps wrong. I think that maybe the better way to put it is I'm not aware of any legal obligation of you following the plan, but I think it is a commitment. I think, as the mayor noted, I wouldn't want to view this as just a token to say we've addressed it. I think we need to follow through on it. But the other piece I think I haven't heard, and I think there were some excellent comments all around the table that I largely agree with. But the one that perhaps wasn't touched on is it's also a living document. And it's a little different than the planning that we're used to, where the process to amend is subject to appeal, and then you must conform with the official plan when you make planning applications. Again, this is a high-level guiding document. It's much easier to amend. It's a living document, but it's going to lay out that roadmap for staff and council in those big future large decision-making touch points. And as I think Director Huff correctly pointed out, certainly we're not going to run off because the plan says put a heat pump in the arena if we know that arena might be shuttered or repurposed in a year, for example. But when we perhaps reconstruct those buildings, they will be built to a standard to meet the goals of this plan. So again, it's I think a lot of the good points were made. Further to the mayor's points, should you wish council or staff to look at an implementation plan or a financing strategy for this, we can certainly give that. We'll do that work should council direct.
Yes.
Okay.
Councillor McIntyre.
I'm not seeing the chaos here. I think we're actually already doing this. And the example I would use is the Milford Bay HVAC situation, where we came into this and said, what we really want is a heat pump. Then we got the figures and said, oh no, we can't possibly buy a heat pump at this point in time, which is sad because we really want to put propane in there. And then it came back to us and said, okay, the request for tenders was way too low. It's going to cost way more to put in this. And so now we can change our decision to go back to, I think, what we all wanted in the first place, which was the heat pump. So I think the way this works is just every time one of these situations comes up, we have that discussion. So I'm not seeing the franticness of all of this.
Committee, I'm going to suggest that there's clearly some very big decisions being made or talked about here, and I don't think this is the moment to be doing that. I would suggest that we go forward on this. We've had a discussion. It's not going to go out of mind around this table, I don't think. And so unless there's further comment, I'm going to call the vote. Mayor Kelly.
I want to clarify, you say we're going to accept it, but the resolution says we're going to adopt it. I think they're two different things. I will accept it, but I don't think we can adopt it until we know what we're adopting. We haven't adopted anything if we're on again, off again, because it was too expensive to put a heat pump in Milford Bay. We weren't committed. We just decided it was cheaper to do something else in the moment. Long-term probably would have paid off, but in the moment felt good.
Fair enough.
Wait, we need to amend?
Do we want, committee, do we want to change, what would be the word you suggest? Be accepted.
Accepted.
Councillor Zavitz, you have your hand up?
Thank you. Yes, totally supportive of the mayor in that. Because I will not approve this, but I would if it was simply we're accepting the report for further action.
Councillor Kent, did I see your hand up? No. You like that change, all right?
I agree.
Okay.
The only other thing I would add, if you give me a second, is just the analysis that we did, and the one that struck me was the analysis we did for the electric Zamboni. We originally weren't going to buy it; it was too expensive. It's a methodology, I think, that we do need to change. I think that when proposals come in for new purchases, RFPs, and we decide to make a decision, I think there needs to be a complete analysis of the life cycle cost of every asset, including things like, the costs of the electricity, the personnel that go into making a decision, either a good or a bad decision. And I just think that's a methodology we need to change in terms of like the way we approach investment decisions going forward. It's a small thing. I think we're doing it sort of, but I think we could go one step further.
Resolution here. I just can't print it right this second.
That's fine.
Anyway,
right. Committee, thank you. So around, do we have a general thumbs up that we would like to change the word from adopted to accepted? Yeah, okay. So I have read this resolution. Let me read another one so that we can change it. Moved by Councillor Mazin, seconded by Councillor Nishikawa, that the resolution be amended to replace the word adopted with accepted. Any discussion? All those in favor? Carried. Now to accept the original resolution as revised. All those in favor? Fine. Okay, thank you very much. Now,
connect after this one.
Committee, I'm going to suggest we continue on. We have, what do we have next? We have establishing an appeals committee. We've got a report that's fairly short, and then there's 2 verbal updates and any OLTs things. So I was, everybody okay with that? All right, let's go ahead. So the next is, Ms. Huff, you got another report. You got 2 more reports here. All yours.
Thank you, Chair. Excuse me. So this is a report that myself, as well as Director of Legal and Legislative Services, put together, and directors here as well. So committee may recall back in November at Planning Committee, during a discussion surrounding the technical amendments that were required to tree conservation and site alteration bylaw, that the committee directed staff to create an appeals committee to hear appeals related to those two bylaws. So this subject report is a follow-up to that direction. And when staff started digging into that task, a number of other bylaws were identified that staff felt would benefit from being subject to an appeals committee as well. So in the end, what is before committee today is the recommendation to establish appeals committee, and then the associated drafting appointing bylaw, as well as the draft fees and charges bylaw. I will just mention that the bylaw establishing appeals committee contains a number of schedules that outlines the rules of procedure, terms of reference, remuneration as well. And that establishing the committee will require a number of bylaws, say for instance, the tree conservation bylaw, to be modified to include some harmonized language that would refer back to this bylaw establishing the appeals committee and providing for a consistent process amongst all of those. And so just lastly, to be clear, the following bylaws would become subject to the appeals committee. So that would be the control and licensing of dog bylaw, the short-term rental accommodation bylaw, tree conservation bylaw, site alteration bylaw, the dark sky bylaw, as well as the alteration encroachment upon public lands. And so with that, both myself and Director Peroshi are here to answer any questions that committee may have.
Thank you for that report. Committee, Councillor Zavitz.
Thank you, and to the director. So essentially, we're to go through all the words. We're essentially applying the committee of adjustment to this task. Am I correct? I mean, essentially, no.
Director Huff.
Through the committee, through the chair to committee members of it. So it would be the public members of the committee of adjustment, so not the entire committee of adjustment.
Right. So I guess my thought, thank you for that. I guess my only thought, and of course you guys would have already covered this off, but the bylaws that they'll be, that may in fact be appealed, if you will be to our own sitting committee. And I just wonder how that looks to people. Wouldn't we want to have a more arm's length scenario than that? That's maybe just a question.
Director Huff.
Thank you, Chair. I think the thought was that by having a committee that is comprised of members of the public, that we would achieve to a certain degree that arm's length sitting and hearing of residents' complaints and concerns and appeals.
Councillor Nishikawa.
Thank you. And through you, I agree with what Glenn had just said. And in fact, it would be that exact same committee that turned them down for something and or whatever, like they're basically or allowed something. I think that I would be more comfortable if it was a separate group of citizens, because it's not, people were chosen to sit on that committee for their talents. But not all of these committees are those same talents, I'll just say. And so I would just suggest that I would like to see a different committee of the public established.
Director Huff.
Thank you, Chair. I'll look to Director Peroshi if she has anything additional to add, but I guess I would just mention, for instance, the dog licensing bylaw or short-term rental, really, that would be something that would become subject to an appeals committee, but really wouldn't have, I don't see immediately, and please correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't see them coming forward to committee of adjustment to obtain a dog license. The committee wouldn't be involved in that licensing aspect or the licensing aspect associated with short-term rental. And it would really be, bylaw officials that would be dealing with residents and following up on enforcement matters related to tree conservation and site alteration. So we don't typically see the subject of those bylaws coming before Committee of Adjustment.
But Committee of Adjustments could be approving a plan that included a site plan or a tree preservation impact or a site plan agreement impact, couldn't it?
So ultimately, through the chair, site plan approval is an administrative task. So yes, there might be a site plan associated with a severance or a zoning application, but ultimately approval of site plan is completed by staff.
And what about site preservation bylaw and the tree bylaw? I mean, what I'm trying to get clarification on is if the Committee of Adjustment is looking at a planning application that has either site plan alteration bylaw implications or tree preservation bylaw implications, that's part of their decision. I think that's the conflict that Councillor Nishikawa is putting out, and I'm curious about the answer to that.
Mm-hmm.
CEO Pink.
Thank you. I can try to take a stab at it, but Director Peroshi and Huff, please jump in if I'm misunderstanding. But I believe the important thing to note is, as an appeal body, they're not making a decision on an application per se. They're not producing plans or reviewing the plans. What would be before them would be an appeal of an order to do certain works. And the role of the committee would either be to confirm, deny, or modify the order. So to the committee's points, they could be dealing anything from dogs to, order under the dog licensing bylaw or the dog control bylaw to tree and site matters to short-term rentals. I'm not really sure who's going to have that expertise in the community of all those fields. And I don't know if they necessarily need to, but where the Committee of Adjustment is, I think, well suited to the role is they're used to a quasi-judicial process and a fair process where both parties can present their positions, the information, and they can adjudicate that and make a decision. But should committee wish to consider a different body, we can certainly speak to the clerk and circulate and advertise for a separate committee. But we felt the Committee of Adjustment was well suited due to the role they've played in adjudicating those types of decisions. But it will be varied topics from a number of bylaws.
Thank you. If I could just ask, does that mean that you don't see a conflict between a decision they might have made at a Committee of Adjustment versus having to pass judgment on compliance with an order?
Through you, I'm not off the top of my head. I think, again, those would be separate processes. If a property owner applied for a minor variance and they were imposing conditions to follow through, that's one thing. Again, if they were to contravene a tree bylaw or site alteration bylaw by removing vegetation and were issued an order by a bylaw officer and chose to appeal that order, I think those are two separate things. I'm not quite seeing the conflict, but I'm happy to, give that some further thought. Should committee, staff can certainly go back and get further consideration if needed.
Thank you. Councillor Edwards.
Yes, thank you very much. What other, they've added some other duties to it, and I believe it was fencing, tree removal, was it not, as well? And that, now I don't have a problem with them sitting on it because I know them, they're very fair. But if there's any overlapping jurisdictions from other committees that they sit on, and that there might be a problem, but I'll leave it up to council because I think they could do a good job, and that I'm quite confident in them. But like I say, it's totally up to the committee. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Edwards. Any other comments? All right, I'm going to read the resolution then. Moved by Councillor Mazin, seconded by Councillor McIntyre. Be it resolved that committee recommends to council an appeal committee be established that will adjudicate and provide final decisions on matters pertaining to the bylaws as outlined in Schedule C to proposed bylaw 2025-007 as attached to report DSES 2025-006. And further, that committee recommend council approve the following: Draft Appeals Committee Establishment and Rules of Procedure Bylaw 2025-007, attached as Appendix 1. Draft Appointing Bylaw Attachment as Appendix 2. Draft Fees and Charges Bylaw Amendment attached as Appendix 3. And further, that staff undertake the required updates to all applicable bylaws to include reference to Appeals Committee and present to council for consideration. Now, any further discussion? Councillor Edwards?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. Just remind the council too that this is only until the election. So if there was any conflicts of that, it could be straightened out the next time. We wouldn't have to advertise for now. So and that because it's just till the election, I would support it. Thank you.
Very well. Any other comments? So let me call the one going once, going twice. Okay, all those in favor? Any opposed? Thank you, that carries. Director Huff, next topic.
Thank you, Chair. It was brought to my attention that committee members may want an update on to the noise bylaw. So I certainly am aware of committee and public's interest in updating the noise bylaw. It is on our horizon. At this moment, there's a few other projects that we're trying to implement, namely being the short-term rental bylaw that is a lot of the attention in our department is focused on right now. So we're hopeful that we can get into the noise bylaw update later in the year, probably in the fall to late fall of this year. So just wanted to provide that information.
Thank you. Any questions from committee? Councillor Roberts.
Thank you, Chair, and through you to the director. I have 2 points. I have a very unstable network, so I'm going to ask both points just in case I get dropped. We've been trying to get the noise bylaw sort of up on the priority list, or actually action, for 2 or 3 years now, at least 2 years. And it keeps on, because of many other reasons, keeps on getting pushed off. I'm wondering if it would be possible to hire a contractor of such just to do the research for the noise bylaw on what other municipalities have done. That's my first question. And my second one, it pertains to zero tolerance policies for bylaws, and just want your insight on that and how we may be able to use it. Thank you.
Director Huff.
Thank you, through the chair to committee member Roberts. So certainly if council were to assign some additional budget money to our department, we could use that to pay for someone. At this point in time, that wasn't anticipated in the 2025 budget for bylaw. There may be some opportunity if bylaw enforcement is slow in the summer, that maybe one of our summer students could do that. But from my understanding, bylaw is quite busy in the summer as well. So certainly at discretion of committee and council, how to approach that. With respect to the zero tolerance, perhaps that's something that staff could take back and consider, rather than providing an off-the-cuff remark. That would be something I would like a little bit more time to think about and gather some input on.
Thank you. That's understandable.
Thank you. Councillor Zavitz.
Thank you, and through you to the director. So given the short-term rental sort of existing or current status, I think that many of our constituents were looking for some sort of relief that this review perhaps could provide. So just a cautionary note on that. We're probably going to hear about that in terms of, you know, the lack of control, if you will, for perceptually a while this spring, summer, for what it's worth. So that, you know, I know I'm certainly with Councillor Roberts on this whole noise bylaw being looked at, and the sooner the better, I think. Thank you.
All right. Any more comments or questions? We have one more verbal update, I think, on the communications items.
Thank you, Chair. This is really a quick one, just to advise committee that, like Council and General Finance, staff are now including all correspondence received on applications into one section of the agenda, which for Planning Committee is 16C. And so you can go there to find the correspondence going forward for future agendas.
Okay. Do we have any OLT status updates and delegated approvals? Is there anything we need to talk about there in the agenda? No? All right. I think we're finished. All right.
Councillor Edwards.
Councillor Edwards.
Thank you very much. I don't know. I don't think I missed it. You were talking about the noise bylaw. What about the fees bylaw that you were talking about? Because I do have a question on that for docking fees.
Yeah, that was the first item in the agenda that we talked about this morning.
Okay, sorry, I missed it. I guess what happened is I was trying to get on because there was a problem with the internet. Yeah. And I got on late, even though I tried. But as far as I'm concerned, docking fees are way too low. And that if we have some that are using, tying up our docks for the whole summer, and $800 or that, or $40 a foot is a little bit cheap. I see them down in Windermere. They take up the dock. They're putting private signs on them and everything else like that. And that the docks were for people coming in to go to the restaurant, to play golf and everything else like that. And that, but I don't know if it's passed, it's passed. But I think we should be looking at that. If I had a boat, I'd park it down there for $800 or whatever it is, compared to going to Parkwood or Marina and paying almost $2,000.
Thank you very much for that thought. I think we have processes for getting that on the agenda, and
okay, I'll bring it on then.
You can do that for our next meeting.
Okay, thank you.
So I have the final resolution here, moved by Councillor Kent, seconded by Councillor Nishikawa. Be it resolved that the Planning Committee meeting adjourn at 12:17 p.m. and the next regular Planning Committee meeting be held on Thursday, March the 13th, 2025 at 9 a.m. via an electronically and in-person hybrid format in the council chamber of our beautiful downtown Port Carling municipal offices. All those in favor? Any opposed? Thank you very much.